dear Richard, for bringing your beautiful garden to us.
You're more than welcome. And aloha, everyone, to the emergence of soul qualities in the cosmic rhythms and movements within the biodynamic calendar, and we could say the movements of the moon. So we're going to just open up for a bit and look at, if we may, the first class in which responded to this question of the Philosopher's Stone and the astrological signs of Aries and Taurus. So right away, we're in this big cosmic picture and a very big spiritual work that has been transmitted through many traditions, spiritual traditions and cultures, in that name of the Philosopher's Stone and different names. And basically, we looked at what is it to elaborate our materials, the material world in which we're incarnated in, and bring it into a subtler realm. And how is this portrayed in this cosmic action of Aries and Taurus? What do they represent on this cosmic language or plane in the big picture of the macrocosmos? And how can we, in our activities as gardeners, bring these principles forth? And we saw in biodynamics, these two main preparations of 500 and 501 are there principally to work with these in as far as this involution goes, bringing down from the subtle world into the denser planes this cosmic food, these cosmic influences that Sabrina just mentioned, what's going on in the cosmos, and then 500, which is working truly in the core of our planet, that's working with a cosmic energy that's entered deep into the Earth's evolution. This Earth, these cycles that are extremely long, and its goal is to subtleize, is to bring, refine this matter and bring it into a much higher vibration, emanation, and radiation. So that was the first class. And the second class, we explored a little bit more how we can work with the different elements to truly create an environment in which the actual seed of life can have the best possible conditions to prosper, to bring forth its qualities, to attract all the necessary elements that's needed, and create the relationships that will enhance this cycle of life. And we saw that that the interaction of two triangles, this triangle of matter and spirit. So matter in the sense of our will, our actions to bring forth our experiences, the desires that we have that motivate us, and then the intentions and the directions which we're going are linked also to something extremely subtle. In other words, our whole cycle, our soul purpose, this extraordinary ocean of love that all humanity is bathed in, and then this extraordinary wave of creation, this creative force that's going on. And the interaction of these two triangles create what we say this symbol of flower of life. And on the physical plane in biodynamic farming, this is related to these biodynamic preparations. Their roles are to create this matrix. In order for our food to be impregnated and bring forth in our evolution, in our realm of experience, the best possible conditions. So now in class 3, which we're here, we're going to look into the emergence, the actual process of gardening, the emergence of soul qualities that takes place in different rhythms. So we're going to link ourselves up. We're a small circle now on this Zoom, yet in this small circle, each one of us is linked through our hearts with a much greater circle. So we're just going to take our time to link ourselves with our hearts. And through this heartfelt resonance, we're going to link ourselves up with other circles of resonance that in this particular time are working, are enhancing, are bringing forth our gardening soul qualities. These qualities that we bring with us, the seeds, the fruits, the essences that we bring with us, and during these periods, we have the possibility to elaborate them and bring them forth. So we're linking ourselves up through our hearts with these soul qualities. And as we allow these qualities, that some that we may feel really truly close with at this time, that we've seen have played a very prominent role in our lives, we're looking at these soul qualities take place in a movement. This movement is our movement of incarnation of our lives. And they take place within the movement of lives of others. So we're inviting through our heartfelt experience to allow our own individual movement to now interact with the movement of others. And we can see that these cycles that are going on have more of an effect as we give permission for ourselves to interact with them. So right now we're giving ourselves permission to enter into our hearts, to feel that heartfelt energy, and then now to enter into an interaction in the movement of these qualities within ourselves through all the different inner movements that we're participating in through our breath, through our bloodstream, through our thoughts, our feelings, and allowing those little by little to interact with others. And we realize that these personal cycles that are taking place on truly a personal plane are also taking place on a much larger scale. That our Earth herself, through its movement through the universe, is also participating in cycles. That the planets around the sun are also taking part in a cycle. And each one of these movements and cycles are there to enhance the possibility for us to interact and be and cultivate these soul qualities that we're born to bring forth. So we're going to allow ourselves through our hearts, through this interaction with others, other souls on this planet, we're going to allow that movement now to take place in the movement of all of Earth. We're part of all of Earth. So we're going to allow that movement to take place in this movement of the Earth as it goes around the sun, realizing that there are other movements going on and other processes that are going on, some that we might understand, some that we might feel, and others that are taking place that we have absolutely no idea. So we're just allowing ourselves through our imagination, through our ability to choose this, to enter in for a small little moment to this cycle of the Earth. And then we're realizing that the universe itself is receiving constantly the heartbeat of creation, constantly this impulse. And so in this impulse, this rhythmic impulse of creation, we realize that that rhythmic impulse of creation is ongoing, never stops. And for a second, during this movement of cycles, we're realizing that there is something constant that's going on. And we feel that constant impulse, heartbeat, if we will, that's within us, that we've opened. We realize that it's taking place on the infinite macrocosmos plane, and it permeates all of creation. So we're just going to sit for a second within this time and space and allow this impulse, this heartbeat of the universe and of our soul to resonate through all these different movements. Thank you. So, as a gardener, as working on a garden constantly throughout my life, there's always been a feedback, you could say, or a reflection that other people would say if they would visit the garden, or they would visit the farm, or we would bring vegetables or fruits or whatever it might be to a gathering or to other people individually. And this reflection would always come up, how important it is to eat food that you've cultivated yourselves. It's amazing how that's within us. And this idea, or this possibility, you could say, oh, it's because, it's a memory that, in the past, that's what everyone did, and we just brought that with us, etc. But if you look at modern society now, for the majority of people, that's not the reality. It's not completely our reality. We don't, my wife and I, we don't eat completely from our garden. We don't necessarily do that, but we do know people that do that almost exclusively. Not entirely, but we do know that. And so I feel that this comes from a memory that we all have within us. We realize that for us to be fully nourished and to receive the best nourishment, we need to take responsibility for cultivating what we take in from this garden that we call the garden of the soul. So, in our incarnation process, as we came through, we touched upon this in the last class that we had. We passed through a sphere which, in astrological terms, there's other words for them, but we call that the sphere of Jupiter. And in this sphere of Jupiter is where we encounter the beings and this garden that we've elaborated through all our different incarnational experiences. And in that, primarily the goal, one of the goals for our incarnation, is to cultivate and bring forth the, our soul qualities, qualities that might not have been cultivated sufficiently in the past, and other qualities that might be new, and others that are in process that we're continually bringing forth, because our soul, this is how our soul nourishes herself, through qualities. So another name for qualities would be these words like goodness, peace, beauty, etc., etc. So force, strength, wisdom. So there are certain qualities that stay with us through many, many incarnations. You could say they're staple foods of our soul, and others that we really spend a lot of time. And this is what forms our experiences. So, as a gardener and as a farmer, one of the things that we're constantly there in front of is that most of our time is done with what we're trying to bring forth and taking care of what we've put in the ground and how that can absolutely bring forth the greatest possibilities and reach its full potential. So some things are quick and some things take much more time. And so these are the movements and cycles that we're in front of. And we realize that these movements and cycles, they have a movement of their own. Absolutely. A lettuce has a movement of its own. A squash has a movement of their own, you know. And so they correspond to different aspects of ourselves that have movements of their own. And they take place, they grow within a movement and environment that can enhance their growth, or it will create challenges for that. And so a science or a way of being for cultivating was built upon that, and there were many, many systems. But what they all agree upon, they all agree upon, are there's a movement, if we become aware of and we harmonize ourselves with, they become, that movement will bring forth a desired results that are very positive for what we're trying to achieve. So the first movement to develop these soul qualities is what we call this seasonal change, and which Sabrina started this talk with, that introducing that we're entering into this period, the zenith of the summer, in which we're completely outside from a soul viewpoint. We're entering into the outside of ourselves, and it represents for our soul a dream time. We're actually asleep. And in the winter is when we awake. We enter back into our true essence, our true alignment as spirit. And at that time, we awaken. So these movements are taking place. And so in this dream that we're living completely out there, there are different experiences that we can have at different times. So that's the first movement, this movement of seasons. And we realize that as we enter into the summer, this outside dream, this outside manifestation that's happening is receiving the best conditions to grow, the best conditions to evolve. And if we can participate in it to the best of our abilities, then we have the possibility to also cultivate within ourselves these qualities that we're born to develop. So that's one of the first movements that we encounter, the movement of seasons. So we saw in the first class this movement of springtime, of Aries, of this rush of energy that's coming, that's bringing us outside of ourselves. It's bringing us outside to visit this earth that we've come to incarnate and to create experiences with her. So in that, we're encountering these two movements that are fundamental that we looked at in the first class, this involution coming from spirit into matter and evolution. So the force of evolution now in a garden is extremely strong. This is what we're doing. We're here to work. We're here to experience. And a lot of these experiences are so worthwhile. They're so amazing. And no matter how much we're in the garden, no matter how much we're there, we realize it's never the same. Even if the movements, even if the repetition is the same, the life experience changes. So that's the first thing we start to see, that we're in a seasonal change. And it's summer, we're coming outside to experience. And what we're experiencing are the choices that we made before incarnating, are the choices we made during winter of what we're going to plant if we have a garden plan. We've gotten everything ready. And now we're coming out and we're doing that. Yet what we're not in control of completely is everything else on the outside of ourselves. So during this winter period of organization, this is a much more intimate relationship because we're planning, we're organizing, we're looking at our experiences that we've had from the last farming or from our last garden. And we're orientating that different. We've probably given our earth a fertilization. We've put down the preparations. We have our compost elaborated. You see, so this preliminary work is done, and it's a very personal one. And suddenly we're entering into a world in which this personal relationship that we've established we can't control because it's a co-creation. So in that, we enter into a whole nother cycle of harmonization. We want that these movements we can feel, we can enter into, and we can start harmonizing with. So in this, in the what is called the biodynamic calendar, but it's not the only system. In Hawaii, there's also a calendar. It's mainly based on this movement of the moon through its position with the sun and the earth, the perspective of the earth in relationship to the universe, which the zodiac, these astrological signs, they represent this circle in which our earth is traveling through. So it's constantly this perspective that we're looking at. So in this rhythm, in this movement, there's several things that we're seeing. There are several things in this seasonal movement where suddenly we're coming outside of ourselves and entering into, we're seeing that when the moon and the sun enter into what we call a conjunction, what they're aligned from the Earth's perspective, then at this moment, it's a really good time to begin something and start looking at what there is to emerge. It's an emerging force. So things that are coming from the ground and coming up, they're receiving that energy. And if we can harmonize ourselves with that, then it's receiving those influences, and those influences are very positive. So that's a very, very basic movement, understanding the moon phases. And so, depending on the position of the sun and the astrological sign it's in, you can say when the moon is in conjunction with that, then it's in that same sign of the sun. So in this case, where the sun is in Cancer and the moon enters in conjunction, a new moon, then the moon also is in Cancer. We have this alignment. And in this alignment, it's going to give forth something that's very particular. In this case, with the sun in Cancer and the moon that's a full moon, so it's completely across from that, it's receiving the maximum of the sun's light and radiations. Then it's in the sign opposite, it's in Capricorn. So in that, there's a balance that's created. And so when you sign at that time, in that balance, it's allowing for this cycle of growth to reach its maximum potential. So in that period, we can start looking at how these different cycles affect ourselves, how they affect our projects, our movements, our desires, our intentions, and how are they affecting our actual garden in which we're cultivating. And vice versa. As we go from a full moon back into a waning moon period, we're seeing that there's something that is taken away from this movement of the sun in the moon. There's a letting go, a surrender. So this period of growth is followed by a period of surrender. So we see that the seed is germinating, it's growing, it's going from the earth up into the sky, whether it stays on the ground or there's a movement, a thrust. And then during this next period, it's going back in. This outside manifestation is letting go. So these are two movements that are fundamental. They're fundamental. And as we look at the calendar is looking at this movement going through this moon cycle, little by little. So what's extraordinary? What's extraordinary, what touched me, one of the things that touched me the most, and I shared this yesterday with a couple of people, and I'm still in the midst of really taking this in, is that Rudolf Steiner gave a whole cycle of lectures on nutrition, short sharings. And one of his sharings, he talked about that we don't receive from the food we eat the fundamental elements that are creating life in our bodies. So, in other words, the proteins, the carbohydrates, the starches, and the fats are not coming from the food that we eat. The food is carrying a blueprint. It's carrying you could say, an image. And our bodies copy that image. They build on that image. They create that image. And they don't retain the properties of the food there. They reject it. That's what he's saying. And that's like, I mean, that's a very, very revolutionary for me concept or understanding of the life process. How do we relate to that? And how do we? And so he's saying that as we're able to have an image that's contained of the food that has a very high frequency, then our bodies are able to reproduce that high frequency. And so that's why you often see that through, this is also a general thing, that through biodynamics and biodynamic food, generally speaking, people will say that there's something there. There's a radiation that comes from that food that's cultivated with this type of intention that's different. And that's what we're taking in. So this becomes the foremost intention in which we would like to hold when we're in the process of nourishing ourselves, and when we're in the process of gardening, and when we're in the process of the garden of our soul, of cultivating our soul qualities. We want to bring into our field to nourish ourselves the highest possible quality possible, because we have the memory of that, and we will reproduce that experience in regards to the intention, the directions that we've chosen before incarnating. So as we can, little by little, bring ourselves forth into that understanding, little by little, we can harmonize ourselves in that frequency. So that that is foremost what we're doing when we're looking at this movement of a calendar. Why choose to do certain activities? And it's the same thing for Hawaiians. They saw that as the moon went through different phases in regards to the actual relationship that the earth is going around the sun, that was more propice for different absolutely fundamental areas of maintaining a human being in life. And so in the Hawaiian calendar, it was fishing, different crops outside, bananas, big crops that grow high in the air, others like taro that are growing in the ground, fishing, all these staple activities that are completely part of the culture. They were harmonized with this cycle of the moon, and they gave reasons for it, and they had names for each of the phases, each of these different phases of the moon, and different, you could say, divinities, qualities, and which they were cultivating. So in the biodynamic calendar, as we look at that, we can see that this is also based on the same thing. It's based that as we look at the moon in different periods, like for now it's in the sign of Earth, in Capricorn, in the full moon, that in that this is very strong for vegetables and for fruits that are in the earth, and for root development. So as we can harmonize ourselves with that and harmonize our activities that go in corresponding to that. So it's also really good for things that you're going to be seeding that have a quick, you could say, quick turnover, like lettuces. And even though they're a leaf vegetable, they work well under the influence of the earth too, of the earth element. So as we pay attention to this, the most important part that we're looking at is that there are certain activities that we're doing that correspond at the same time to the soul qualities that we're developing. So I'd like to read something that Rudolf Steiner gave that talks about the seasons and puts this in relationship a little bit more to the work of the cosmos. So this is taken from a series of lectures on Archangel Michael, and just a very short extract. We can prepare our souls to become receptive to the activities that go on outside in the course of the year so we can prepare ourselves. We can continually deepen this sympathetic participation in the cycle of the year. Sympathetic, I think what he's talking about is that we're conscious of it and we can feel it. We're entering into a relationship and we can enrich our experience so that we feel ourselves living in every blossoming of flowers, in the breaking open of the buds, in the wonderful secret of the morning, the glistening of dewdrops in the rays of the sun. And these ways we can get beyond the dull, conventional way of reacting to the outer world that merely puts on an overcoat in winter and lighter clothes in summer and takes an umbrella when it rains. Only by going out of ourselves so that we experience the interweaving activity, the flow and ebb of nature, do we really understand the cycle of the year. So, so that's the first part of this. So he's saying that for us to get beyond this repetition of just forms of incarnational activities of the earth in which most of it is organized, we need to get out of ourselves. We need to participate more consciously in this. And that's what we do. As we plunge into nature, as we experience nature, we're taking in us, to the best of our abilities, these processes. So it's not just getting things done in the garden that's taking place. There's a whole magical process that's taking place in our soul by going out of ourselves and participating in these seasonal changes and these changes going on in the day that are happening, that are affecting us on a very profound and deep level. So he goes on to say, and if we do that then, when the spring passes over the earth and summer is drawing near, so this period, we will be in the midst of it with our heart and soul. So if we do this, we're completely in this. We will discern how the sprouting, budding life of nature unfolds, how the elemental spirits fly and whirl in a pattern laid down for them by planetary movements. This is what I would like to enter into a little bit more. So, the fundamental, you could say, movement or interaction with the invisible world, the elementals, that are participating on an intimate scale with all these things that are happening in nature that we see and that we're opening ourselves to. Automatically, we're entering into harmony with much on a greater scale with the invisible world represented by the elementals or the nature spirits. Yet it goes even further. It goes, and this is the line that I find extraordinary, in a pattern laid down for them by planetary movements. So there's a pattern, there's a hologram, there's something that this extraordinary participation in nature that's taking place, these solar flares, if you might say, are taking place in a bigger scale, these planetary movements. There's a pattern for that. And as we can understand that, I feel that we're entering in on a much deeper and profound level in this process of evolution of our soul in this lifetime. We're taking responsibility on a much deeper level of how our life is moving forth in regards to the cultivation of soul qualities. So he continues. Then in high summer, we will go out of ourselves and share in the life of the cosmos. So the results of that is that we will want to go out and share in this life on a big scale in the cosmos. We'll feel that. We'll feel that we want to embrace on a much larger scale what's happening in the universe. Certainly, this will dampen down our inner lives. What he's saying, this intimate experience that we're living within ourselves, we're completely outside of ourselves in the universe. So there's an effect of that. But at the same time, our experience of summer will lead us out in a cosmic waking sleep. We might say to enter into the doing of the planets. So in other words, we enter in more fully into planetary movement by going outside of ourselves, by opening up, by having that possibility to go beyond just this poetic, you could say, this extraordinary experience in nature that's always different, and understanding that that's taking place in the invisible world by beings that are constantly doing that, that are constantly involved in the dewdrops, that are constantly involved in the opening of buds. They're fully participating. And so us, as we go outside of ourselves and see that, we enter into that on a deeper level. Yet, you could say, on a larger scale, that's taking place within this movement of the planets. The planets are coordinating that. And in that, we can say that we can go outside of ourselves completely, yet maintain a connection with this universe, this cosmic waking sleep. So in this, I feel that this is the purpose of bringing ourselves into rhythmic movements, starting to align ourselves with different movements that are taking place in the universe. We're allowing ourselves to fully participate in what's going on as far as the changes of our garden, the changes that's taking place outside of ourselves. Yet we're saying, okay, but this is taking place also on a planetary level. And these planetary movements, they're beyond what you could say, what I absolutely want to do, that I can harmonize myself with these planetary movements. I can put myself in relationship to these planetary movements. So these are the purposes of these different calendars, in which the biodynamic calendar is a representation. So as we look at this succession of elements in the signs, and in which the moon passes through, we're understanding that there is a relationship, a movement from this movement of elements. We're going from fire to earth to air and to water, and that repeats. So we're seeing through this biodynamic calendar that in fire, we're looking at the fruits. We're looking at this truly cultivating our soul qualities takes place within this fire element, to ripen them, to bring them forth, to give them the best flavor. And then afterwards, in the earth element, which is after that, then this next, that we want to introduce that inside of ourselves. That's what we want to nourish with. And in these lectures that Rudolf Steiner gave, one of the questions was, so what is the best diet that one could have? And, this is all, these lectures, there's a lot, and there's a lot of material. So I don't want to just gloss over this or whatever, but still bringing them into a few words, sometimes it's like a seed will spark an investigation and spark a development, will spark a new relationship. So basically said that it really depends on where the soul is at in the incarnational process and what the soul is capable of awakening in this lifetime. So he said that in order for us not to be nourished with animal products, that means we have to take complete responsibility for the formation, for nourishing our astral body. When taking in animal byproducts, it's the animals that are doing that for us. So as of now, you can say for the plants, as we nourish ourselves with plants, we're truly working on our mental bodies. We're working on forming our minds, that our minds can hold, they can connect to the true essence of our spirit. That we can bring that forth. So by nourishing ourselves with plants, this is the work that we're doing. So going further, by just nourishing ourselves with fruits, we're taking full responsibility for nourishing our spiritual bodies here on earth. So we said that if that's what we're able to do, that would be the best diet for someone that's incarnated. But there's nothing bad in any of the realms. So in that, what brought me once again to look at this a little bit deeper was saying that it really depends on what we want to choose and what we want to take responsibility for in how we nourish ourselves. And it's not just the same thing with food. It's also the same thing with everything, that there's this same level. So he's saying that by bringing in this higher vibration in this frequency, we're able then to elaborate a quality of life that's obviously much more in tune to our soul purpose. So I encourage you all to start opening up and looking at these movements. So the first movement is that we talked about is this movement of the earth on its axis, day and night. And we realize that in day and night, there's this outgoing of energy of human activity, and then this outgoing energy of plant activity. And that there's an exchange there. You see? So in that exchange, it's something really extraordinary that's taking place. We're seeing that for that exchange to take place on a truly highest level, there needs to be a rest. There needs to be this element of sleep. There needs to be this letting go and consciously letting go of an outside movement and entering much more deeply into an inner movement. So these two movements that are fundamental for our lives are represented by the rotation of the earth on its axis. And while the earth is rotating on its axis, from the line of the horizon, every 2 hours, there's a different astrological sign that's coming up. So we're receiving that. And in that, depending on the phase of the moon, it's in, and the sign of the sun that it's in other words, the season, the month of the year, well, that's accented. That's amplified. So these movements are fundamental. They were a part of everyone's life. And now, because we're capable of living without paying attention to that, it's not necessary. Well, the results of that, and that's what most people say, is that the quality or the frequency or the vibrations of what we take in are diminished. And so people, when they go on spiritual retreats, when they go into a center that respects that, that is aligned with those movements, that are maintaining those movements in their lives, well, then there's a difference we can see, and that's why we're replenished. We're entering into that more deeply. So those movements are very, very important. So the first one is this movement of the earth. The second, the movement of the moon in its phases. And the third, the movement of the sun and the different planets revolving around the sun. So this is the basis of the biodynamic calendar. This is the basis of these cosmic movements that we can enter into more fully. And it's the basis on how we elaborate our soul qualities within ourselves. Most of the time, they're done, I'm talking to the majority of human beings, they're done unconsciously or subconsciously through experiences in which this aspect of karma, in other words, past lifetime experiences, play a big role. But as we emerge more consciously and we choose and we decide, oh, okay, I'm going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to experiment in things differently. I'm going to make other choices than the choices in which our society has based itself upon become less important, and other choices become much more important. So the choice of this gardening of our soul qualities, of understanding why we're here on earth, what we're doing here on earth, and what are the different qualities that we're attracted to develop. What are the experiences that keep repeating that bring us in to elaborating or revisiting these qualities, either through other people, through other experiences, or through our own inner work, is the most important. And we start understanding that through our garden and our relationship to our garden and how we relate to our garden, we have a possibility to do that even more, that's taking place. And then if we're nourishing ourselves from the garden, either through the food we eat or through the flowers and the beauty that's around us, then we're able through that to receive something that's extraordinary. So this is the goal. This is the goal. That these rhythms and movements bring us much more in tune, that we can break away from what Rudolf Steiner said of we can get beyond the dull, conventional way of reacting to the outer world that merely puts on an overcoat in the winter and lighter clothes in the summer. So to get beyond that, that means that our primary interest is something else that's within a domain that's much more subtle. So thank you very much. I think we're at our hour. And so if there are any questions or comments or things that others would like to contribute, feel free.
I just wanted to thank you for starting us in that meditation, and then it felt like the whole bringing of information, and as I was receiving it was a rhythm. So that was really beautiful. And I'm just really appreciating today that sense of what that actually means when I'm being with the beauty of a flower. Because there is so much beauty right now out in nature that I'm noticing. And so this idea and awareness of I'm gardening my soul. Like this is also a quality of my soul that is connecting to this. So thank you. Yeah, there's a real aliveness in me with
Thank
this this
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. That's beautiful. Anyone else? Anything else that a question or something that someone else would like to share that you feel has touched you or that you would like to add to that from your experiences?
Richard, I'm so interested in this picture of digestion that you brought from Steiner about how um, we swallow these substances that are more than fats and sugars and proteins and they're energy prints that we copy and we take into ourself and then we let go of the matter. That's what I took from what you said. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
I wish I could, but I'll try. I'll tell you because when I first received this, I mean, obviously Rudolf Steiner, he has his way of putting things into context. There's, Omar Mikhail Ivanov, who I also studied a great deal. He really talked about how that in the food, the food is a message, contains a message of God. That's what the food is. It's containing a message of God, and that's what we're receiving. That's what's keeping us alive. God, Goddess. And so this is another way of explaining it, yet it's so revolutionary. I mean, I can't imagine the scientific world, whether it's in, I don't know very well, the Anthroposophic Society. I can't imagine someone that's in the scientific world that embraces that and goes, "Oh yeah, that's that's in perfect harmony." Yet that's what's happening. We can see in the subtle worlds that this is how I understand it, that we take in something in the subtle worlds. We take in an image and our bodies take that in. They do something with it. There's a co-creation. And in our bodies already there's things that are prepared to take that in. So I think that's what Rudolf Steiner was saying. He's saying that it's not this food that's nourishing, it's within our bodies already. There's something prepared to take from the food, the image that it's receiving, the subtle energies that it's receiving. And it can elaborate, it can bring it into a physical form for our body. So it's always going from spirit into matter. Always. And then us, from that, we're bringing forth something. From matter, we're bringing forth something.
I love that like nourishment is a communication. It's like an interface. And I had a friend, or I met someone, I had an acquaintance once who got a PhD in nutrition. And his research thesis was on calorie counts of food and to see if calories give us energy, if that's true, if it's the calories of the food that gives us the energy for life. And he came in with this question, well, what of these yogis that eat so little and some eat nothing? And how is it that their bodies have energy, but they're not eating calories? And so where does energy actually come from? So it was his scientific proposal that our energy does not come from the calorie of the food itself. So that there is some other relationship that's creating the life force other than the matter itself.
There we have it. And I think that's for each person, if we grasp that, then little by little, our lives change. Our lives are completely changed because normally speaking, that's not necessarily how we're educated or how we're brought up. So there's another example which Rudolf Steiner has said, and also Omar Mikhail Ivanov, that it's not the heart that's circulating the blood. That's not what happens. The heart's just a pump. It's the soul that's circulating the blood. It's a soul movement. It's an actual soul movement. It's completely linked to the soul. So as we're able to bring in the qualities of the soul, the movement of our blood, the movement of our heart is completely different than if there's something else happening. And, those things are revolutionary. And to correspond with that, Omar Mikhail Ivanov, he said, in the future, and which is already happening now, there's a huge thing on that, is that science, all the healing, all the major breakthroughs are going to be happening through the quality of blood. It's going to be seen that we can actually see the emanation and the radiations, the subtle qualities that are going on in the blood system. So that someone that has the same illness for one reason or another, whatever those reasons are on a soul level, that their relationship to that illness is completely different, depending upon the quality of the blood that's within their system. Because it's the quality of the blood that's, well, I think it's the same thing, is that depending on the quality of the food and the quality of the food that we garden, and that's where this comment that I said at the beginning comes from. I'm sure that you've had the same thing, and that other people that have done gardens or flowers or whatever, that for someone that doesn't have that in their life, suddenly when they receive that, they go, oh, that's so amazing to be eating the food that you cultivate. It's a very common thing, very common. So, yes.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're not interrupting.
Thank you for this. This is, oh no, is this okay? Can you hear me okay?
Can you hear her okay? Yep, you're perfect.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah. So what's coming to my screen here is that Edgar Casey talked about how in the future you'll be able to diagnose someone from one drop of blood. And I had that experience about 15 years ago from a physician here in Nevada City. And he was able to, from one drop of blood, really figure out what all of the testing and all the stuff from the medical world did not. And now what this particular group of people is doing is looking at like the different geometric patterns of the plasma in the blood, that I feel like the light patterns in the plasma, like all these things we're learning are now kind of like getting more and more elevation in terms of the education and things coming together. That was just kind of like
coming to my mind as you were talking about some of these things in terms of ingesting the food in our body and our souls, like energetic reading of what is quote unquote external being ingested into the internal. And I just thought that was kind of an interesting little, I don't know, it just feels like it somehow could be related.
It's huge. Absolutely. Thank you, Susan. I feel that's amazing. The work that people are doing is absolutely extraordinary, and that have been doing
Well,
for
it's
many
so
years.
interesting. Yeah, well, it has been. It's just that it's like kind of been in piecemeal, but I think now things like the mycelial networks of whatever are starting to really start to coordinate with each other and finding resonance with this information that's now revealing or, you know, remembering or revealing or whatever the proper word form is in the essence of the gift of nature in our own, with our, in, you know, with our own
Yeah.
nature.
Yeah, and it's really beautiful because everything is corresponding. In all walks of life, there's this alignment of that it's happening in the subtle world before it's manifesting in a world that's denser. Oh,
In the invisible realms.
exactly. So little by little, we're being encouraged to go in that direction. We're being supported to go in that direction. And as we make choices, as we start elaborating that, as we align ourselves and interweave with that, then I feel that our lives really change on a fundamental level.
Yeah. Thank you for this beautiful offering.
You're
I'm so
welcome.
grateful.
Thank you for being on it. It really touches me, everyone that's on it. So let's just do a little closing and offer our gratitude and to all the souls that have participated on the physical and the invisible realms, and truly allowing ourselves to share our experiences and share our knowledge and share our possibilities to increase the awareness of the subtle worlds and to bring those subtle worlds into form, into manifestation throughout our own personal lives and through the lives of others. And that we can participate more and more fully with that, to circulate that energy, to be a part of that energy, and however we're being guided into doing, because the forms are multiple. So I just thank you all, and may you all be blessed, and that the next offering will take place in around the period of Mary, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene. We can, other words, this will be the grace, the garden of grace. So we're going to look at that in the middle of August, around August 15th, 16th, 17th. I don't know. I haven't the idea of the date yet. And we're going to look at how can this garden of grace bring forth within us this environment of peace, harmony, letting go, surrender, and our abilities to enter into a much deeper relationship towards this period that will be coming after it of the big harvest. We're remembering our awakening, Mikhail. So thank you all. Thank you so much, Susan and Sabrina. Thank you all who have been on the call. And I look forward to being with you again.